Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. After having a look at some of the Dutch tech trees with Super Cacti and Soldier 676, it's time to have a look at the ground tech tree. But this time, we're actually not just going to be focusing on the Dutch stuff because certain circumstances have changed. So therefore, we're going to be looking at the BeNeLux ground forces tech tree. So what is the difference, Cacti, between this and the, I suppose, Dutch version that we were going to cover?
So yeah, in the December of 2019, we were basically finishing our Dutch tech trees. We had pretty much completed them entirely, and then we were starting to look towards other ideas and things we could do, and that's when the Benelux started to become a thing. So the Benelux is, well, the name is actually Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg. So it's the combination of those three nations. And if you don't really know Europe that well, these three nations are very close allies of each other, just friends, I guess, and they're all connected to each other. Like, you could almost consider them to be one nation. So that's where this comes from. Like, we had the Dutch ground forces tech tree, which, to be honest, was a bit sad and has a lot of copy-paste vehicles. But now we've also combined Belgian vehicles into this tech tree, and now we have a lot more unique stuff. If you're wondering, for Luxembourg, they only have two vehicles we can really add in: a helicopter, which we'll get to later, and I believe a Humvee with a tow launcher on it. But sadly, Luxembourg does not really have a whole bunch of other stuff for us to cover. But just like the previous Dutch tech trees, in the top right, you can see a certain color code and things we have used. So on the top left, we can see an example of Luxembourg. Here you can see that the Luxembourg flag is a bit smaller than the background. In the tech tree itself, this background will be filled up with a different flag, let's say Britain or US. So that would signify that this vehicle was used by Luxembourg, or by Belgium, or by the Netherlands, but it was not really modified in any way. So it's almost exactly the same as the normal foreign vehicle. Then to the right of that, we see the same example now with the Belgian flag. But here, the Belgian flag is much bigger than the flag on the background. So this would mean that it's, yes, still based on the vehicle of that foreign nation, but now it's modified by Belgium or the Netherlands or Luxembourg. So it becomes unique to that certain nation. And to the right of that, you have a full flag. This could be Belgium, Luxembourg, or Netherlands. This is just a domestically built vehicle and unique to that specific nation. And below there, we have three different colors. We have yellow, orange, and red. Like it says, if a vehicle has a yellow background, then the vehicle was built as a mock-up or the prototype was under construction. Not everybody is a fan of this, but we thought we include vehicles like these because, well, they were being built, they were being worked on, so they would be nice to have in game. Orange takes it a step further. Instead of the vehicles being under construction, these were further planned ideas, but they never became a thing. Something you could also add in the orange color is vehicles that only had a hull designed and the turret was built somewhere else, but they were never mated together. There are some examples of those in this tech tree. So they were planned to be put together, but that never happened in any way. And then red, this is full blueprint design. This is the stuff a lot of people would disagree on, and I can understand, but just for the sake of having interesting vehicles, we also added that in. But luckily for you, in the ground forces tech tree, we don't have any of the blueprint vehicles, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, it definitely is. And before we do get started into rank 1, I would also like to thank the other people who also worked on this tech tree. So today with us we have Super Cacti and Soldier 676, and then also, people who are missing are Captain of Stieg, Block High, Pytor, Cheesy Muffin, and Private Woke, and also Jeremy Kipp. So thank you to all those people for also helping out and creating these tech trees, which have been really, really fun to go through. So let's get started. We're going to be going from left to right and basically talking about each of these vehicles, who used them, and also some general information about them. So the first one to look at is, of course, the Marvin Harrison Reserve Mark III. So we'll start off with you, Soldier. What is this vehicle about, and how is it different to, some vehicles that we have in the game?
So, as you can see, this is part of an armored car line. So this tech tree has a complete armored car line. Well, it includes cars that technically don't really have armor, but that's besides the point. But yeah, so this is to start that off. It's a reserve, and it couldn't go any higher. Like, this vehicle isn't great. Let me just acknowledge that. It's a armored car from Marvin Harrison, and it was used by the Dutch in the Netherlands East Indies. So by the KNIL army, as it's called. It's armed with one Boy's AT rifle and a Vickers machine gun. And again, the Boy's AT rifle, well, it is a rifle and that's great, but it's not the best panning machine, so it wouldn't be very powerful. But then again, it's an armored car. I really hope it does get scouting if it gets added, because normally rank 1s don't get scouting, but for armored cars, I hope they make an exception or something like that. So it can at least have scouting, it can have perhaps also artillery, and then it can fulfill a bit of a different role than your standard tank killing capability. So yeah.
And the next vehicle on the list is part or the start of the light medium tanks row of stuff, and this is of course one of the popular designs of the pre-World War II period. The Vickers 6-ton makes its entrance into this with the Mark F version, so let us know a little bit about this one, Cacti.
So the Vickers 6-ton was a private project built by Vickers. And in the end, the British Army did not buy these, so these vehicles were exported quite a lot. And if you look at the uses of this vehicle, Russia is one of the major users, and I think China also had them. And as you can see with this flag, Belgium also had one. If you were to look up the Vickers 6-ton, you'll see that it's only armed with machine guns, but luckily this Belgian version is slightly different. This one has a 47mm gun. As you can see, it's a very short barrel gun, so it's not going to be great. I think you can very closely compare these to the French guns you get in game right now. But yeah, this tank, it's a nice starter. It reminds me a lot of the T-26 in the Russian tech tree, and I think the T-26 is actually based upon this vehicle as well, considering the Russians bought it. But in the end, it's light armor, meh-ish gun. It's a reserve.
Yeah, it definitely wouldn't blow anybody away, but it is kind of a surprise that something like the Vickers 6-ton isn't already represented in War Thunder. Kind of the same with the Renault FT. Yes, obviously, these vehicles wouldn't have a lot of power behind them, but just because of the historical factor, it's kind of a surprise that we don't see them. The next one is some French boys. So we have the AMC 34 FRC 47, and then we have the AMC 35 FRC 47 ACG 1, which I already believe is in the French tech tree, or maybe it's a slightly different version. What are these vehicles about, Soldier? Like, is there a difference between this and the one in the French tech tree, or are they exactly the same?
So we start off with the first one, that's the AMC 34. That is, as you can see, an orange vehicle. This is one of those cases of hull exists and turret exists, but never put together. So Belgium planned to buy the AMC 34 and use their own turret on it. But eventually they chose the AMC 35, which is very similar, instead. So this technically was technically never put together. They did use the turret and planted on like as a sort of bunker, a turret on a bunker. So turret exists, hull exists, but sadly never actually put together. And the AMC 35 is what I says is the one they actually went for, the hull that is, which is often also called the ACG1. Yes, we have the AMC 35 or the ACG1 in-game, but that has the French 47mm gun, and the Belgians have their own 47mm gun. And they use that gun in their own turret, which is pretty similar to the French turret, in this tank. So it is slightly different than the French vehicle we have in game. Also disregard the flag. It should have more Belgian flag than French since it is modified, so that will be fixed later on.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It's definitely nice to see another AMC in the game. Obviously, I believe for France it is a rank 2 vehicle, so you can scout with it. So maybe extra, compensation can be made to this tech tree if it ever gets there to also give it scouting. The first in the tank destroyer line is once again an old friend when it comes to the history of Britain and how it came to pass, in the 20s and the 30s when it came to the tank designs, and this is the Cardenloyd Mark 6. So tell us about this one, Cacti. How did this one come about for this tree?
So yeah, the Cardenloyd Tank Cat. I think everybody knows this vehicle, and it's been exported all over Europe during World War II. And the Belgians also got their hands on one. And the Belgians, being as Belgium as they could, they thought, let's try to turn this tank cat into a tank destroyer. So that's when they thought it would be smart to give it a 47mm gun. And you can also see in the picture, it was just kind of plopped on there. In the end, the tank cat proved to be not stable enough for this gun. The recoil effect was just too powerful for it, which I can completely understand. So I believe only maybe one or two was built of this vehicle, and they were tested and they worked semi. So it'll be a very funny, derpy vehicle to start this tank destroyer line off with. But crew protection, yes, it does have a gun shield on the front. It's not great.
Yeah, that makes sense. It would definitely have limited usage, but then again, there aren't that many tank destroyers at lower tier, which are non-turreted, which do have that many uses, so it would definitely fit into that category. The next vehicle is the T-15, which is another very small turreted vehicle. Let us know about this one, soldier. What's this one about?
Yeah, so this is a Belgian-made tank, very based on a British tank, on the light tank Mark III, that is. And this one is actually armed with a 13.2mm machine gun, so not that powerful in an anti-tank killing capability. But then again, it's in support line. It's more of a support vehicle, a bit like the M2A2 in a way. It would also, I hope so, get something like scouting, artillery, just a bit of extra punch to get it more into a more usable state. Or you could, in theory, shoot aircraft down with it, but it is a tank, so it won't probably be the best at that. So yeah, it's a nice little vehicle that will not be too powerful, a bit like the M2A2, as I said, to start off your SPAA line.
Yeah, the general thing when it comes to a lot of the early vehicles, they're much more representative, I suppose, of the Chevrolet that we see below it. But that doesn't mean that there isn't place for stuff like the T-15. I think a lot of people would look at these first set of vehicles and kind of be worried in a way because they wouldn't have enough killing power. And I think the idea is at some point, you would have these in the game, and hopefully we get some more vehicles which were designed around that time as well to try and help them out. The first premium option that we have is the Marvin Harrison CTL Forte. So, what is this really? How small is this machine to start with? And also, what is this machine about, Cacti?
So the Marvin Harrison CTLS is another tank cat, but these ones were used in the Dutch East Indies. And well, it's not gonna be the greatest premium in the world because this one's only armed with a single 50 cal, and then as on secondaries, it also has some 30 cal spread around. But considering we have the M2A2 in the American tech tree, and that a 50 cal at 1.0 can be very powerful, it's a funny little premium option. So it being a tank cat, its armor protection is not going to be great at all. Only up to 12.7mm actually. But when it comes to speed, it goes 53 kilometers an hour, which is pretty nippy for 1.0. So this is just a funny premium little vehicle you could just buy yourself and just zoom around and shoot people down with that 50 cal.
And the next vehicle to have also a look at is the M8 Type 2, which seems to be an M8 Greyhound with a little bit of extra. So what's the difference between this one and a normal M8 Greyhound that we see in the game, soldier?
Yeah, so this is a really a derpy vehicle. It is an M8 Greyhound that was used in the Congo area, where Belgium obviously colonized it, basically. And for some reason, somebody decided that it was a great idea to add a large cone on it, like a big as extra turret. I don't even know what to call it. It still retains the 37mm gun, like it still has the normal turret basically, but then it has this tower on it basically, which has like a 20mm and or a 7.62mm machine gun. It's such a weird vehicle. That's kind of the reason why it's an event vehicle. It's just too odd to fit in the tree. If you want to know more about this vehicle in particular, there is a Tank Encyclopedia page on it, so you could check that out.
It is definitely an oddity when it comes to the M8 Greyhound. Normally, what we see is just a standardized one, but it's always nice to see different designs. And talking about different designs, we have another armored car, and this actually seems to have some Swedish influence as well, if I'm correct about the flags. So when we have a look at this, the Panzer Wagon, the M36 and M38, what are these vehicles about, Cacti? Is it just your standard armored car, or is there a little bit of a twist?
So first, regarding the name, I think a lot of people will be tempted to call it a Panzer Wagon, but that is German, and considering we're Dutch, we say it as Panzer Wagen. So it's almost the same name, but it's slightly different. Now, about the vehicles, these are actually the Landsverk L180 and L181. The Panzerwagen M36 is the L181, and the M38 is the L180. Now, as you can see in the flags, these are slightly unique to the Dutch, and that mainly being the engines we used in them. So I believe, I could be wrong with this, but I think we ordered these without engines. So we put our own engines in it. So I think these Dutch ones are a bit faster than your typical Swedish versions. But when it comes in game, it's just an armored car. It'll be very nice to have. And the weaponry, it'll have a single 37mm Bofors gun. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we get these in the Swedish tech tree in game, actually. They would be very nice armored cars to have.
Yeah, I hope that we do get more armored cars of a lower BR, and since the design is definitely enticing, it would be nice to see these added to it in one way or another. The next ones are a little bit more tanky, and these are the T-13s, the B1 to the B3. So let us know about these, soldier. What gun does this actually have, and what are the differences between the different variants?
Yeah, so these are again a Belgian attempt to turn an existing British tank, or well, actually, not really a tank, more of a tractor, into a tank. And they did this on this really derpy way, which is just lovely to see in a way. So you have this sort of tractor, as sort of said. This is for the T-13 B1 and B2. Actually, B3 is slightly different. And then you add this sort of gun shield, and you add this gun in it. And the gun is actually facing backwards. So you have a 1.0 Archer. No, it has a Belgian gun again. It has the Belgian 47mm FRC, and it has a coaxial. So it is quite an odd vehicle. It is hard to make work because it is again mounted backwards. But it would be pretty cool to play. It would definitely be something different. And so you have the B1, and then you get the B2. The B2 is slightly different. It has a slightly more turret-like design, but it is pretty similar. And then you get the B3, and the B3 is just the same vehicle for some reason, but it is very different. So this was it has a different chassis. It retains the same cannon, but this time it is also in a turret, and this one is at least mounted forward, so you could actually shoot all directions with it. And it goes like 40 kilometers, that is, an hour. It has obviously no armor, so it's kind of a boom or bust idea, unless you obviously fight against French tanks that have no post damage effects. But yeah, it would be a really fun vehicle to play and very odd.
And the next vehicle is another American crossover. This is the Marvin Harrison CTMS 1TB1, and obviously that's a very similar name to the premium vehicle, but what seems to be different is at least the turret and the gun that is mounted on it. So what is the difference between this and the premium version that is in the pre-existing tech tree cacti?
So the CTMS is based on the CTLS, that premium vehicle, but it is much bigger. You could compare this vehicle to the size of a Stuart, actually. What this vehicle is, well, it has an interesting history, because in the Dutch East Indies, we wanted to have tanks to fight against the Japanese if they ever wanted to invade. But we could not build any tanks of our own, so that's when we went to Marvin Harrison. And we actually asked them to build tanks for us. So these vehicles, they have been tested by the US Army, but they were never taken into their service or anybody else's service. So these vehicles are, well, very unique to the Dutch, you would almost say. You can also see that there's quite a BR gap. We go from a 1.0 to a 2.3, and there's a good reason for that. This thing has a 37mm gun, but it's not just a gun, it's an autocannon. This has a 37mm 44 caliber automatic gun with a 5-round clip. It is very difficult or hard to find proper information on this gun, so armor penetration or reload speed, I really cannot tell you much about this. There are photos of them. We use this gun on certain PT boats as well. But yeah, in the end, look at this as a Stuart with an automatic 37mm gun and a 5-round clip magazine.
I'd just like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Chris Giltnane, Daniel Stanton, Jay Wilt, John Ryman, Martinez, Moxie, Super Cacti, Trigger Hippie, Eugens Terry, and also Elove Goat and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.